Chapter 1. Into the Woods. The forest was beautiful, and it was hungry. The friends met early in the morning at the trailhead, barely awake, clutching coffee cups and backpacks with fresh camping gear. The air was crisp, thick with pine and damp earth. James, the trip's ringleader, was the first to arrive, radiating enthusiasm as he waited for the others by the entrance. "Come on, you slowpokes," he called as they gathered. "We'll want to get deep into the forest before dark." Mia shot him a dubious glance, tightening her scarf. "Are we sure this is safe? The stories about this place, they're a little unsettling." James laughed, dismissing her worry with a wave. "Legends! You can't believe everything you hear, and besides, the real world is boring if you never take a risk, right?" Reluctantly, the others nodded. There was Tom, the strong and quiet one who always played peacekeeper in the group. Sarah, a thrill-seeker with an adventurous streak but a surprisingly sensitive side. Kevin, the skeptic, never one to shy away from voicing doubts. And Emily, the quietest of them, who held herself slightly apart from the group, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They began to walk, their boots crunching over twigs and fallen leaves, weaving between the towering trees that seemed to lean closer as they entered the depths of the forest. The sun was bright above, but in the forest, light filtered through branches in shifting patterns, casting patches of shadow across their path. The hike started out easy, with laughter echoing through the trees. James kept them entertained with ridiculous ghost stories about haunted forests and vengeful spirits. But by noon, the trail grew steep, and the jokes tapered off. They made their way up a hill, breath growing heavy as they pressed on. As they climbed higher, the laughter faded, and an uneasy silence took hold of the group. The trees grew denser, casting their shadows darker, and the forest seemed to muffle every sound but their footsteps and breaths. It was as if the forest was swallowing the noise, absorbing it into the thick, damp silence. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing, a perfect spot to set up camp. James was the first to break the silence. "See? Safe and sound. This place is amazing," he said, dropping his bag and looking around with satisfaction. The others unpacked their gear slowly, glancing at each other. Kevin looked visibly unsettled, his gaze shifting around the clearing as if he expected to see something hidden among the trees. "Do you feel that?" he muttered to Mia, who was arranging her tent poles nearby. "Like someone's watching," she shrugged, trying to appear unfazed. "Maybe it's just being out here in the open. We're not used to it. Feels exposed." Kevin nodded but didn't seem convinced. There was something eerie in the way the trees loomed over them, each branch bending as if trying to listen in on their whispered words. By evening, they had a fire going. As flames flickered, the group huddled close, sharing snacks and telling old stories. But the mood was different. There was an edge to their laughter, as though they were all too aware of the forest pressing in around them. It was Sarah who broke the uneasy quiet, with her voice barely above a whisper. "So did you guys hear the local legend about this place? About the Wanderers?" James rolled his eyes. "Come on, Sarah, those are just stories to keep kids from getting lost in the woods." "No, really. I read about it," Sarah insisted, looking into the fire. "They say that if you hear voices calling your name out here, then you're already lost. The forest is calling to you, luring you in, and once you're alone, you never come back." Silence settled over the group, heavier than before. They sat quietly, each lost in thought, gazing into the crackling fire as shadows danced across their faces. Emily, who had barely spoken since they arrived, shifted uneasily, glancing over her shoulder at the dark wall of trees surrounding their camp. She opened her mouth to say something, but then paused, her eyes narrowing as she looked out into the forest. "Did anyone hear that?" she whispered. The group froze, glancing around. Only the sound of crackling fire and the rustling of leaves answered. Tom laughed, though his voice sounded forced. "Nice one, Emily. Don't start with the creepy noises already." But Emily's face was pale, and her eyes didn't waver from the trees. "It wasn't a noise, it was a whisper," she insisted. "Someone calling my name." Kevin cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. "We're all a little jumpy. It's natural to feel spooked out here. This place has a vibe, that's all." They all tried to shrug it off, but each of them felt a slight chill creeping down their spine. One by one, they crawled into their tents, uneasy thoughts swirling in their minds. That night, as the fire died down, an eerie stillness filled the clearing. Each of them lay in their tents, listening to the quiet sounds of the forest. Emily's eyes were wide open, heart racing, as she replayed the moment in her head. She was almost certain she'd heard it, a faint whisper, just beyond the light, calling her name. Outside her tent, she heard something rustle. Emily held her breath, ears straining. The whisper returned, so soft it might have been a trick of the wind. Emily! Her skin prickled, and she squeezed her eyes shut, willing the voice to go away. But it continued, faint and insistent, each syllable drawn out like a song. Across the clearing, Mia lay curled up, her fists clenched. She hadn't heard her name, but she could feel something watching, something close, observing every breath she took. Every instinct told her to stay quiet, to lie still and pretend to be asleep. As night deepened, the forest settled into silence once more, blanketing the camp. Yet each of them lay awake, knowing that somewhere out there, something was waiting for them.